So, Excellencies, dear colleagues, it's now 10 a.m. Geneva time. We are officially launching this event. Welcome to this briefing on the 7th Global Environment Outlook process organized within the framework of the Geneva Environment Network. We know this is a very busy time for many, but we wanted to have the opportunity before we close the year to invite our colleagues leading on the UNEP Global Environment Outlook process to update us on its advancement. And we will refer to this process by using the GEO acronym. The resolution on the future of the Global Environment Outlook was approved by member states in March 2022 in a resolution adopted at the resumed 5th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, which is, as you know, the highest decision-making body on the environment. And it was approved with other historical resolutions that we have been closely following here in International Geneva. And we very often refer to that very historical session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. This important global environmental assessment process aims at keeping the world environmental situation under review in order to periodically inform and support collective and individual action by member states and by stakeholders. The process is now well underway, as you will hear from our guests, and is expected to be launched at the 7th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, which will be convening in December next year in Nairobi. As you will hear, the work done by our UNEP colleagues builds on a strong consultative and participatory process and is relevant to multilateral Geneva. The findings of the GEO reports and products bring indeed science-based information that can be of support to the numerous processes member states and stakeholders are leading or following in Geneva. Our community is well aware that many of the Geneva multilateral processes are also supporting or developing policy and action to tackle the planetary environmental crisis that the world is facing. And this is something that we regularly discuss within the framework of the Geneva Environment Network. So to brief you, we are delighted to be joined today virtually by two colleagues from the UNEP Early Warning and Assessment Division, who are based in Nairobi, and I will be introducing them as I give them the floor. We are also joined here in Geneva by our UNEP Science Policy Coordinator for the Pan-European region. And to formally welcome you to this session, we have also online with us Switzerland's focal point for UNEP, Andreas Binden, who will deliver opening remarks. And before I give her the floor, I would like to, as usual, remind everybody that the documents presented, the summary of this event, as the video will be made available on the webpage of this event. This is the most popular questions we generally get in the chat. Throughout the event, who is online can raise questions by using the Q&A box, and we will use this to feed the discussion during the Q&A session. And with also, as you can see on the next slide, the transcript is also available for those who have joined online in over 100 languages, as indicated now. So now, to formally welcome you, I am delighted to give the floor to Andreas Binden. Andrea, over to you.
Thank you very much, Diana, and good morning or afternoon to everyone. Distinguished participants and dear colleagues, on behalf of Switzerland, I'm very pleased to join this briefing on the progress of the Global Environment Outlook GEO-7 process. And let me first thank the UNEP Europe office and the Geneva Environment Network, GEN, for organizing today's session, which is very timely and before our Christmas break, so thanks for that. So the GEO, as UNEP's flagship assessment process, is pivotal in keeping the global environment under review. It bridges science and policy, offering policymakers like us a solid foundation of scientifically sound data to make informed decisions. Comprehensive science-based information is critical for guiding policy and action the complex environmental challenges of our time. The GEO reports have provided invaluable insights into the state of our environment, the effectiveness of our policies, and projections of future trends. They have helped us evaluate progress or the lack thereof towards our environment goals. Looking ahead, Switzerland sees GEO-7 as a critical resource for international policy processes, offering actionable insights that align with and enhance the implementation of key frameworks, including Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the UNFCCC, and the Chemicals and Waste Multilateral Environmental Agreements. We expect GEO-7 will serve as a bridge, highlighting intersections between change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. This can demonstrate how integrated responses across these areas can reinforce sustainable outcomes and impact. The launch of GEO-7 at the 7th United Nations Environment Assembly in December 2025, so next year, will be a key moment to accelerate global efforts towards sustainability by providing practical insights into how we can achieve our shared environmental goals. I look forward to hearing about the progress of the GEO-7 process and discussing how GEO-7 can be further developed to ensure that it effectively meets the needs of the stakeholders. Thank you very much, and with that, I give back to you, Diane.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Indeed, it's not only in Nairobi that sound can be complicated. So you broke a little bit, but it was very clear. Thank you very much, Andrea, for helping us setting up the scene to this event. So now moving to our colleagues in Nairobi, we are delighted to now turn to the chief of the scientific assessment branch, who is also the acting head of the GEO Secretariat, Mr. Martine Capelle, who will provide us an overview of the GEO-7 process and where we stand now. Martine, over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. I hope you can all hear me, because here in Nairobi we have severe internet challenges, connectivity challenges this morning. So I hope, can you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Oh, that is good to hear. Thank you so much. Good morning, colleagues in Geneva. Delegates, very happy to hear on this call and me morning. It's of UNEP here to the web with you. I feel part of the parcel. As you may know, our UNEP flagship feel the GEO last second report GEO said you'll be in the 7th UNEP 5 by states and stakeholders in resolution 5/3 adopted at UNEP 5 Assembly number 5 a few years ago. And as you may know, the GEO is an integrated environmental assessment scientific exercise, and we will hear more about it from the panelists, in particular the panelist Ignacio Sanchez, my colleague here in Nairobi, who was. And this whole process, therefore, it's fueled by science policy, but the first original national mandate adopted in 1970, created the two. It was the mandate was to keep the world's environment under review. Now, its partners are making sure that this global assessment is, first of all, scientifically credible, secondly, policy relevant, and third, legal or legitimate. And this is without being prescriptive. Now, the GEO will also underpin UNEP's medium-term strategy. And that is a very important element during this coming year as UNEP develops its way forward, its programs for the next several years. And it is clear that the findings and the insights from this GEO report will inform future policy decisions, negotiations, and strategies, as well as action by member states and stakeholders as soon as the report now be launched. Our report will be more relevant than ever, more impactful. The latest science, it will work to support environmental sustainability. It will focus particularly on solutions pathways that tackle the multiple environmental challenges we face today and that threaten the very foundation of life on Earth. We talk about climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, but also land degradation and other crises that we are facing as a humanity. The report's knowledge and recommendations going forward will be critical to increase the world's ambition and action necessary to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and targets by 2030. It will cover everything from climate change to the management of chemicals and everything in between. And as you can imagine, the strength of the GEO lies in the diversity of its experts, as they come from everywhere around the world, and they are involved in the development of the report. And yes, the report brings together scientists, economists, and modelers, and experts, for instance, in indigenous knowledge, in behavioral and social science, in policy researchers, and experts from other scientific fields, next to, of course, natural sciences, which is the traditional field that has been addressed by past reports. So colleagues in Geneva, we really hope that after this animated webinar, you feel excited and encouraged to engage with us and support the Global Environment Outlook number 7 as we deliver it for the UN Environment Assembly next year. And remember, this is a world report that will serve you all. Thank you again for joining us today. Back to you, Diana.
Thank you very much, Martin, for this overview. So now let's go more in depth on what is on what this report is about, with our colleague Ignacio Sanchez joining us also from Nairobi. So Ignacio, you are the acting head of the Global Assessment Unit within the Early Warning and Assessment Division, and we are delighted to welcome you and to give you now the floor.
Thank you very much, Diana. Let me first of all thank the UNEP Europe office and the Geneva Environment Network for organizing this event and giving us the opportunity to present on the progress made by the GEO-7 report. Good morning, distinguished participants and colleagues from Geneva. It's a pleasure to be here today with you and talk about the GEO-7 and delivering this presentation on driving science-based transformational change to tackle our most present environmental challenges. I would like to start, first of all, yes, now I'm seeing my slides here. So I would like to start, first of all, giving you three potential situations to explain a little bit what the GEO is about. Imagine a minister of Côte d'Ivoire with his cabinet, Minister of Environment with his cabinet, and they are talking about the interlinkages of climate change and land degradation within Africa for a meeting that they are preparing at the African Union. A second scenario would be a colleague from UNEP in the Asia Pacific office who is implementing a project on sustainable food systems. And she's trying to look for scientific evidence on how to bring transformational change to the food value chains in the region and how to present a coherent approach to decision makers. A third situation, it would be a colleague in a think tank in Latin America Sorry, no. A third situation, it would be a colleague in, sorry, apologies because it's moving a bit slow, the slides, so it's taking me a bit while. All right, now I see it again. So a third situation would be a decision maker in Latin America who is looking about how to bring transformational change in the energy sector in the region. So he's looking at evidence on incentives, financial and economic incentives for the transformation of the energy system to achieve the environmental and climate goals. So all these three situations, they have at least two things in common. In the three situations, they are looking for scientific evidence, information, and data that can bring information to the decision makers. And the other thing in common that they have these three situations is that they are having challenges to identify all this information from different sources. There are sources looking for specific situations, but they are not bringing a kind of an integrated approach. So here is where UNEP comes and try to support decision makers with the global environment outlook. As we call it, the GEO, it's a UNEP flagship report since 1995, and it's at the core mandate of UNEP of keeping the environment under review, and it's providing the latest science to inform policy and decision making for action. As my colleague Martin said, it's an intergovernmental, expert-led and integrated environmental assessment. That means that it's mandated by member states through the UNEP. It's expert-led. That means that it's not just UNEP, but we count with a large pool of experts and authors that they are writing the report for UNEP, and it's an integrated environmental assessment. That means that it's not looking just at one specific issue, it's not looking just at climate change or at biodiversity loss, but it's really looking at the interconnection of the different environmental issues. Since the inception of 1995, the GEO has been extensively produced and used at the regional, national and local level. We estimate that there are nowadays more than 200 GEO-style reports from all over the world. And as my colleagues previous talking to me, they were mentioning, the GEO-7 will be launched now at the 7th edition of the UN Environment Assembly that is scheduled for December 2025. So UNEP for this GEO-7 is trying to respond one big question. So we are trying to bring one story for this big question, that is, how do we solve humanity's most pressing environmental challenges? Of course, this big question, it's really bringing many more questions. So if we want to transform the most pressing environmental challenges, we need to look at the climate, how we are going to phase out fossil fuel by 2050, or on biodiversity, how we are going to reduce the environmental impact of food systems by 2050. If we look at pollution, we need to how we are going to create a near zero waste and fully circular economy by 2050. And all this, it will need also transformation at the finance level, how we are going to redesign the economy and the finance system for a sustainable and just future. So as you can see, there are many angles of these problems that we need to tackle. And just to give an example of how this level of integration is needed. If we talk about just the issue of land competition, for instance, we are expecting that the critical energy transition minerals will increase on a fivefold by 2050 due to the transition to a renewable energy. We are expecting also by 2050 to have 2 billion more people in the world that we need to feed, and that potentially will increase the food production and food demand at least in a 35%. But if we look at the impacts of climate change and land degradation, it is estimated that by 2050, the crop yield will be reduced in 10%. At the same time, we are committing in the biodiversity plan to protect at least 30% of terrestrial land, coast, and marine ecosystems by 2030. And if we look at the land degradation rates, it's estimated that by 99%, by 2050, 95% of the Earth will be degraded. So you can see that as I said, there are many angles for this, and when we are trying to solve specific issues, we really need to look at the integration of the all processes. And GEO-7, it's actually trying to look at this. So I was saying that this is an assessment that is looking at the interlinkages among the global environmental crisis. That means that the GEO-7 is going to look at the interdependencies of climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution and waste, and land degradation, and how these crises impact in the different environmental systems of air, land and soil, ocean and coast, and fresh water. Together with this assessment of the global state of the environment, GEO-7 will complement with a set of scenarios. GEO-7 will present a business as usual scenario where the negative impacts of continuing with the current trends will create, but it's also presenting two scenarios, two target and seeking scenarios. And that means that they are looking at how to achieve the international agreed environmental goals based on technological change and behavioral change. And these two scenarios will also present the benefits and the potential implications at the environmental, social, economic levels. These scenarios also will be complemented with what we call solution pathways. These solution pathways are trying to explain how to transform key human systems that are at the root cause of this environmental degradation. So these human systems are the economic and financial system, the energy system, the food system, and the material/waste system. So basically how we extract materials, how we use them, and how we dispose them. So these solution pathways, they intend to inform decision makers on how to bring a coherent approach to develop and implement policies to solve this global environmental crisis. The GEO-7 will also bring some regional specific chapters that will break down the assessment of the state of the environment, but also will break down these scenarios and these solution pathways to the level of the regions, and in some cases also to the sub-regions. GEO-7 is also trying to ensure multidisciplinarity. So we are counting with experts on natural science, on social science, on behavioral science, on environmental and economic modeling. And for the first time also, the GEO-7 is bringing indigenous knowledge and local knowledge to the report. Finally, about the GEO-7 also, we would like to let you know that we are working on developing an interactive digital tool that it will be designed with a user-centered approach to support decision makers in the way that they can access this information and make good use of all this evidence for policy development and implementation. As I said, this is an expert-led process, so we count with more than 300 experts from all over the world in many different disciplines, as I said, also ensuring gender and regional balance. And just to finalize here and now to initiate a little bit the discussion, we would like to already call for all of you to share your expertise with us. As we said, like this process is already ongoing and we have experts from all over the world, but we want to keep hearing from experts on what is new and what is critical, how these solutions they can be really transformational. So at the moment, the opportunity to engage with the GEO-7 report and process is through the review of the GEO-7 process. It is right now ongoing. We will share the link to the READ platform. That is the platform that we are using for the review process, and we encourage as many experts as possible to join us in this review process and to either review specific chapters that are related to your area of expertise, or to also review the summary for policymakers. The summary for policymakers, it will be a more succinct document that it will go together with the full GEO-7 report, and then we expect to help also decision makers with the key findings of the GEO. And finally, how do we get to action? So you all members of the Geneva Environment Network, we are all in this boat together. So what we encourage is to all decision makers to make use of this, the findings of this report once this is launched in December 2025, and try to use the findings, the solution pathways, and the scenarios to inform your governments, to inform your departments on how to bring this transformational change in a coherent way. So with this, I would like to thank all the participants again, and to the UNEP Europe office and the Geneva Environment Network again for your interest and for giving us the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ignacio. This was a very comprehensive presentation, and you have indeed, in this presentation, highlighted many challenges that are addressed in the upcoming GEO-7 report that are relevant for our policymakers here in International Geneva, member states and stakeholders. So now let's turn to our next panelist. We are joined here in person by Cyril Siwe, who is, as I mentioned earlier, the Regional Science Policy Coordinator for the Pan-Europe region of UNEP. So Cyril, you have now the floor.
Thank you very much, Diana. Excellencies, dear friend, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be joining this meeting this morning to share thought, but at the same time to also join my colleagues from Nairobi and discuss where the process is, and most importantly, in terms of our regions, how this benefit from the regions asset, and how can we continue to lead in this? How can we continue to lead in the process? I will connect this a few presentation with one of the presentation that my colleagues Ignacio mentioned, namely GEO-7 is one story to answer one question. How do we solve humanity's most pressing environmental challenges? And as we have now get used to, when we talk about challenges, is climate change, is pollutions, and is of course the nature crisis. So how can GEO and how can the regional, how can the pan-European region be leading and be part of this solution through the GEO processes that we are here to discuss about? So again, one of the comments that Ignacio provided was all these are interconnected, whether we take it from the climate angle, from the biodiversity, pollutions, and finances. But how is it related to the pan-European region, and how can the region be leading this conversation? Not only in terms of raising good questions, but also in terms of approaches, best practices, etc. So very quickly, dear friend, this is the few reflection that I would like to share, but mine is mostly to open for more conversation. So we all know that GEO is about assessment, and the key themes has been presented. So pan-European has many assets. I will not read all of them, but one is very rich biodiversity and ecosystem, abundance of natural resources, strong policy frameworks and regional cooperation, technological and scientific expertise, And we have heard from Ignacio these large pictures of more than 300 expertise, where you can really see that we here in Geneva International in particular, we benefit from the network of more than 130 agencies that really create that environment where people can really network and exchange best practices, experiences, and where science can really help to have a decency. So also a very high public awareness and participations and commitment to climate actions. The Paris Agreement have told us that have demonstrated how Europe was at the forefront of this conversation, and that is not something to take lightly, because currently we all know how the recent climate change conversation went, and we also see how the European countries were really at the forefront of the conversation, and how they have really managed to be leading most of the conversation. May it be through the funding, and may it be through the solutions, etc. So Europe also has a lot of protected areas and conservation initiative, and also sustainable urban development and cultural history and integration. Ignacio mentions the specificity by region, mentioning also putting emphasis on some chapters that are very particular to regions. And one of the key assets of this region was also a good contribution to the indigenous knowledge. That also thought about how the indigenous people built solutions to address the climate change, biodiversity, and the pollution. And policy response and initiatives are so many. One of the examples that I could mention here is the European Green Deal, which is a comprehensive plan to achieve climate neutrality and sustainable development by 2050. The second one are with the help of the European Agency for Environment, the many national strategies that are being supported and funded by, of course, by the European agencies, but also the knowledge and the help of other friends, like those from the UNECE and of course from OECD, that avail a lot of data that help decision makers to make decisions to protect, to at least start thinking of a solution to combat the triple crisis, and of course the international cooperation and collaboration. So when we talk about Sustainable Development Goal and the GEO-7, I know that around the table I have an expert on SDGs who can educate us for for hours, which is my excellent friend Wendy here. But what I want to say here is that as we move through the finalization of the GEO-7, we have to remember that the SDGs give us some target, and the solution that is under development under the GEO currently follow the same path as those that we have that is being well developed under the different global target. And it also highlights the importance of the integrated approach, and of course how regional cooperation has to be at the center of that development. Now, how are we integrating all these findings into regional plans? It's very important that to highlight that the current process has been built on the spatial analysis, which has come from the region, and the pan-European region has been really at the forefront of delivering and provide data. That was very important to build the current scientific evidences. And of course, the process itself is the data-driven decisions. And we all know how it's important to generate data, which is really the fundamental of the GEOs. And our region is also at the forefront of this. Now, what are the key opportunities for collaboration that we are foreseeing leading to the launch as we gradually move to December 2025, that God willing, we will be all there to attend the launch of the GEO-7. But how can we continue to share best practices, and how can we continue to, through the capacity building, to be that engine, to be the asset for the region and also for other regions? Of course, that we have to continue to join forces on the research angle, so that we can continue to benefit from the best practices and the best environmental sustainability practices and discovery. So perhaps to stop at this level, I would say GEO, it's a report that provides a valuable framework to understand what are the key pros and cons, what are the key actors, what are the key messages that has also to be drive and foster people work and collaboration, and also inspire decision maker to make a decent and sustainable decision to protect our environment. It is insight that can guide policy decision and inspire collaboration throughout our work. And by actively integrating the GEO-7 finding into regional plans and fostering knowledge sharing, the region can make significant progress towards addressing what is now well demonstrated, which is a triple planetary crisis. So it is very important that we continue to have as a key pillars of the reflection, the interlinkages and the mutual reinforcement. Interlinkages in terms of problem solving and mutual reinforcement when it comes to how the crisis really acts. So we cannot address this one pillars without thinking of others. And of course, building policy coherence. And GEO is that platform where we come from all over the world to really sit together and look into how are we addressing these issues all together. And one of our leaders used to say that we don't have a planet B, that the current planet is the only one that we have. Indeed, it's a good platform for collaboration. So we do hope that as the momentum grow, that particularly the region will continue to be the platform where we can share the best practices and where we can also lead in terms of best solution and best environmental solutions. So perhaps I stop here and back to you, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cyril, for bringing us more in depth on what are the challenges and the importance of this process for the Pan-European region. So now that we have heard from the experts, and you have all heard that you still have opportunities to provide your views on this process. Let's now turn to the audience and see if you have questions while we have still the experts here with us. So I'm first turning to the room. I know that there was a question online about indigenous participation, but I think that Ignacio was very clear about the fact that those views have also been integrated in the process. So I'm first looking here at the room to see if anybody looking at Indonesia and others would like to ask a question, perhaps. Yes, we have Indonesia here in the room, so I'll let you just click on the mic. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Diana, and colleagues. And first of all, Jen, for arranging this event. I'm not so familiar with the report, to be honest. But if I may provide your question, seek your guidance on, would this report be like incorporating all other reports in the other pillars, for example, climate change, pollutions, and diversity, and now we are just about to create the science-based panel for the pollution, right? We are not there yet, but is this report aimed to try to summarize and integrate all the other scientific-based panels or agencies, so it would help policymakers and governments to do their policies, I guess. That's my question. Thank you.
So you're referring to the IPCC report, the EBES report that is going to be launched next week, and a few other big assessments that do exist. So before okay, let's turn to our colleagues in Nairobi. So who wants to take the floor? Martin is there, so let's give Martin the floor.
Thank you, Diana, for giving us the floor. And let me first of all thank the Indonesian delegate for his question. This is a very important question. right? Because the Global Environment Outlook does not want to repeat or duplicate work that has already been done. So first of all, we recognize there are many assessment reports coming out of the IPCC, the IPBES, and for, of course, as you mentioned, the future Science Policy Panel on Chemicals and Waste, among so many other global assessments. There's a global methane assessment, the global resource outlook done by the IRP, the global land outlook, global biodiversity outlook. There's so many of these global reports that are more specific on all kinds of topics. So what the Global Environment Outlook, the GEO, will do and is doing is providing an assessment of assessments. So this is a kind of meta-analysis that is being done using as input all the existing recent reports, assessment that come out of all the other science policy panels, intergovernmental panels on climate, on biodiversity, on chemicals, and so forth. And we bring all that information together and then look at the cross linkages between, let's say, climate change and biodiversity, or biodiversity and pollution, etc. Land degradation, how does it relate to climate change and biodiversity? So we focus here, we have a kind of what we call holistic approach, integrated approach, where all these different assessments come together in order to come up with one single coherent messaging and a set of key findings based on these existing reports, but more in an integrated manner, at a higher level, at a meta level, as we call it. So yes, we take those into account, and the GEO will provide knowledge on the interlinkages and the higher level messaging for an assessment of the whole environment, all elements of the environment. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Martin. And there is another question that came in online that is also related to the discussion we just had, which is about how have the past GEO reports been used in the various environmental negotiations, and how can we put these reports more forward in these spaces?
Thank you, Diana. I can already take the floor, but let me, in the meantime, also ask my colleague Ignacio, if you would like to take the floor. I would say raise your hand, and then I can refer to you. So this is also a very important one. How have past Global Environment Outlook reports fed into policies, decisions, and so forth? Well, I can tell you that the main messages of the previous Global Environment Outlook, number 6, the 6th edition of the report, which was launched in 2019, came up with 3 fields of action that need to be tackled. One is food, in relation to biodiversity mostly. Another one is energy, in relation to climate. And the third one is waste, in relation to pollution. So these key messages coming out of that GEO-6 process 4 or 5 years ago, for almost 5 years by now, have fed into many, many resolutions that have come out of the UN Environment Assembly, particularly the last one, all of those after 2019, I could say. And even the current discussion on the potential plastics treaty, and I think you're all familiar with the INC process, the Intergovernmental Negotiation Committee for the Plastics Treaty, which just met recently in South Korea, for instance. All those discussions make use of the Global Environment Outlook previous edition, the number 6, where we talk about tackling waste. So here we talk about marine plastics, waste, pollution, etc., also in relation to the circular economy. So yes, the information has been feeding in to a number of policies, resolutions, plans going forward. But we feel we can even go the extra mile and make sure that the next edition coming out next year is even going to be more impactful, more relevant, because we will provide a set of what we call solutions pathways. And recently, as you may have heard, there is now communication to member states on the theme of the 7th UN Environment Assembly, which is called, if I remember well, I just saw it this morning, advancing advancing sustainable solutions for a resilient planet. I'm just memorizing now. Advancing sustainable solutions for a resilient planet. That is going to be the theme of the 7th UN Environment Assembly next year in Nairobi in December. And our Global Environment Outlook report that we will launch at that time will provide solutions pathways. So it will feed directly into the discussions going to happen at the UN Environment Assembly, because we launched the report just before the kickoff of UNEP, right? So yes, we will be even more impactful, because the topics that we address in the GEO will directly relate to the overarching theme of the Assembly. I think I should stop here, but perhaps Ignacio, yes, if you would like to add, please.
Thank you very much, Martin. Well, I would just like to add that this GEO-7 process, it will not just finish with the launch of the report, but in the UNEP 5, when the resolution 5/3 it was approved, member states requested UNEP on the production of the 7th edition of the GEO report, and also on the delivery of what they call at that time supporting services in the areas of capacity building, knowledge generation, and support for policy making. So that's something that UNEP has been, UNEP and this branch, scientific assessment branch, has been doing already on ad hoc basis, engaging with member states and governments on how to develop their own national state of the environment. But now in this GEO-7 process, we are going further, and these supporting services, we will be, after the launch of the GEO-7 report, we will be engaging with member states at the regional and at the national level to further explain the findings of the GEO-7. Just to give you an example, one of the products that is being designed at the moment is what we are calling science to policy seminars. The idea of these science to policy seminars is to have 1 or 2 day session with member states, where we will be explaining the findings of the GEO-7 process, sorry, the GEO-7 report, but also trying to translate these findings to the national realities, to the level of progress in terms of environmental related policies, and we will be working with governments, not just with the ministries of environment, but also with the goal is to reach out to ministries of economy, of finance, of planning, of industry, because many of these solutions that they are going to be proposed by GEO-7 needs to be coming not just from one part of the government, but like really as a coherent approach, a coherent policy approach from different ministries. So yeah, we are expecting to kind of give this extra, take this extra mile to make sure that all this scientific evidence is translated into policy action.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I know you want to add something, and I know there's another question here in the room. So let's turn first to Cyril and then to Wendy.
Very quickly, just to add on what my colleague Ignacio just mentioned to the attention of the excellencies from Indonesia, is just to highlight that the GEO is built on national expertise. Is your experts will come together to share what they have assessed as a problem, what type of solution they have tried, and now based on the global science, we try now to bring all those to match together, all those taking into account the interconnectedness of the issues that we are having to deal with, and also agree on what could be the best solution to implement it in order to address the different causes. So if I take the example of the chapter, the GEO chapter for Asia and the Pacific, it was the indigenous, for example, knowledge. It's very heavy there, and the authors meeting was extremely very heavy because of this indigenous knowledge being used or being cited as a contribution to solve to address at least some of the issues related to triple planetary crisis. So I will anticipate how moving forward, the launch of this report will also be critical to many countries. And I'm sure that as we move forward to that time, continue to engage will also be very important. So I look forward to the next session where we will have the opportunity to really discuss based on what has been already finalized at the findings and see how this can be integrated in the capacity building tools, maybe to address some of the specificity if this is the case for a country. Thank you.
And before I give the floor to Wendy, I just wanted to bring here a question that is related to what you have shared now, which is about the GEO moments that have been flourishing in the various regions. And have there been cases where learnings, key messages, and recommendations from other regions have been shared with other regions? So how is the interaction among the various regions? So with that, while we reflect on that, let's turn to Wendy, who wanted to intervene.
Thank you very much. Good to see you colleagues on the screen.
And you can introduce yourself for who doesn't.
My name is Wendy. I'm from the Europe office, working on environment and health, SDGs, and many other things they put on my shoulder. A few observations. And as one of the people who actually appreciate the work of the GEO team, we just came out of the Pact for the Future, and also the SDG review process. What we know for fact is that the environment dimensions of the 2030 agenda are the ones we are lagging behind a lot. And even the Secretary General has given us an F when it comes to that. So in that context, how can we use, because this is there's a very impactful, the way it's been designed now, very impactful, very helpful. How can we use the GEO-7 in terms of accelerating the environmental dimension of the 2030 agenda? That is my first question. The second one, of course, as we are thinking of accelerating the 2030 agenda, are we prepared for the post-2030 agenda? And to what extent can we use the findings of this GEO in terms of formulating the post-2030 agenda, 2030 to 2050? Could that be a possibility? And my third question is in the context of, I'm glad finance is mentioned in the outline you gave. The beyond GDP conversation, which is also very well captured in the Pact for the Future. Today, over 50% of global trade is basically about nature. Well, we're literally taking out stuff from nature and it's being traded, but that has not been articulated properly. So how could that be captured even in the current conversation? And then my final one, then I'll stop. You talked about the nexus. When we started the 2030 agenda back in 2015, the baseline we had was by 2050, the world population will be 9 billion. That is the assumption we made. But fast forward, if we check the progression that we have, we're actually going to have over 10.2 billion people by 2030. So what does that mean in terms of the nexus on energy, food, and water? How do we feed over 10.2 billion people? How do we provide energy? How do we provide water when we are confronted with the water scarcity every single day? And also the urban-rural divide. By 2050, literally 2/3 of the world population is going to live in our cities. So how can this work can actually frame, in particular, the beyond 2030 agenda and up to 2050? Over to you. Sorry for the long, lengthy questions, but it's too important.
So thank you, Wendy, and over to Nairobi. Who starts? Martin and then Ignacio? Okay, let's go.
Thank you, Diana, and let me first of all thank the two delegates for their points. First to the first delegate who spoke, learning key messages across regions. This is very important. I can tell you that in the Global Environment Outlook edition number 6 process, we had what are called regional GEOs. So the regional reports across all the UN and UNEP regions were produced at that time to provide the latest information at regional levels. So now for the current process for the GEO-7 that is now underway, what we have mostly is, first of all, we have all kinds of chapters, around 20+ chapters, where the various themes are discussed. We talk about air and climate and oceans and land and fresh water and biodiversity, etc. And these realms or themes are discussed in chapters to which contributors from all regions are providing their inputs, right? So we have already among the authors themselves kind of learning experience as they together work on these chapters, right? So that is one thing. So we are already capturing learnings among experts from different regions in the current chapters because jointly they're developing these chapters. Then there is a set of regional chapters in the report, and Ignacio can speak more to that. Furthermore, we have a review process ongoing, and Ignacio mentioned that you're still welcome to join as a reviewer and can nominate yourself, and there are some links here in the chat box, if I'm correct. And we now have if I'm correct, over 2,000 reviewers already from all regions who will provide their comments, you know, so there might be a reviewer from Africa who is going to look at a chapter from Asia or about Asia and can provide his or her comments into those chapters. So we're really already on the go right now, capturing the learnings from authors and reviewers as we go. Then to the other delegate who had 4 questions, excellent questions for us. So regarding the environmental dimension of the SDGs for 2030, we are all aware that these are lagging behind. The targets are not being achieved by 2030. Now, how can we use the GEO to accelerate the environmental dimension of the SDGs? Well, exactly, the GEO will provide, as we said before, solution pathways that will offer a range of options that can be adopted by countries, governments, member states, other stakeholders, NGOs, private sector, you name it, civil society, and they can pick up on those solutions and implement them, take action with partners on the ground, in the water, in those countries, to accelerate achievement of the environmental dimension of the SDG. So we're providing a kind of, let's call it a palette of options going forward to implement solutions that can help achieve the 2030 agenda. Now, regarding the post-2030 agenda, very important question, of course. Again, the GEO can inform that process, right? There's such a wealth of information that will come out from the reports that we can feed into the whole development process of new targets beyond 2030. So the GEO is not just a report, it's a tool that can be used. It's a knowledge kit that can be used with other assets. We are not only talking about an old school PDF, we have all kinds of interactive digital tools that can be used to inform all those processes to plan beyond 2030. Now, regarding the GDP conversation, as you say, beyond GDP, to better say it that way. Yes, how can we account for all impacts on nature that global trade is having? Well, this is a topic that the GEO will speak to. Very clearly, there will be information on this issue of how the economy, ecology, to say it in simple terms. And that should also again inform the conversation around beyond GDP, where we need to look beyond just mere economic growth, because we cannot have economic growth. It's taking its toll on the environment. It's a no-go for the future, we all know, because it's detrimental to life on Earth, including humankind. Yes, you talked about the nexus areas, energy, food, water, in view of the global population going beyond 10 billion instead of the estimated 9 billion. Well, we also look at nexus areas. We're looking at all these interlinkages between energy, food, and waste and water. And again, the GEO will provide solutions to tackle those challenges. We talk about the climate change challenge, the pollution challenge, the biodiversity loss challenge, land degradation, others. And of course, it's all interlinked, as I already said in my previous comments. So again, the GEO is here to provide a source of information of the latest knowledge on any issue related to the environment, to boost environmental sustainability, and to help society move in the right direction, where we can have a stable energy, stable food, and stable water for the population that the planet will be the home for in 2030 and beyond. I think I stop here and give Ignacio the floor to add some points from his side, and perhaps Cyril, I think, is also lining up. Please,
Thank
Ignacio.
you very much, Martin. Just to complement, so the GEO-7, the first part of the GEO-7 report, that is the state and trends of the environment, it includes one specific chapter on SDGs. So it's assessing how the different environmental targets of the SDGs are progressing and the socioeconomic implications of these current trends. Moreover, on the second part of the report, where GEO-7 will look at the outlook and as I mentioned, these target and seeking scenarios, there are these two target and seeking scenarios. One mainly based on technological change, and the other scenario that is focused on behavioral change. Of course, these are kind of extreme scenarios, because in reality, it will not be just about behavioral change or technological change. It will be kind of a combination. But for the purpose of the modeling exercise, this is how it was defined. So these two scenarios, target-seeking scenarios, their target is to achieve different international agreed environmental goals. So among these environmental goals that these scenarios are trying to achieve, of course, there are also the 2030 agenda. So, and even more, and now connecting with the beyond to 2030, these scenarios goes up to 2050. So the socioeconomic implications that these scenarios are going to assess, that they are going to assess the socioeconomic implications on basic material needs. It will also assess fair and justice. It will assess security and economic impacts, employment. So all this, it will also give hopefully useful information for these discussions now beyond the 2030 agenda and where we need to head in terms of setting our targets. And then, well, I fully agree with what you are saying. It's a huge challenge where we are looking ahead. In my opinion, and this is kind of something that is actually reflected in the GEO-7, with the finance and economic system that currently is in place, as one of the main sources of environmental degradation. So the way that we are extracting materials nowadays in a linear way, with the increase in the demand of these materials and also in the demand of food and in general all type of environmental services, is really putting the degradation levels to a level that it's not how would I say, like it's I mean, we cannot continue with that. So the important part of the integration, and when we talk about the solution pathways, is well, many of these assessments, and GEO is not the first one, of saying what needs to be done. We know that we need to kind of get rid of fossil fuels by 2050. But what GEO-7 is trying to explain in these solution pathways is the how we are going to get rid of fossil fuels, how we are going to reduce the consumption of animal protein, or how we are going to increase novel protein into the food mix, how we are going to introduce renewable energies without kind of moving from a fossil fuel based economy to a raw materials based economy. So all these things, all these solution pathways, they are really trying to explain this how. And again, it's not going just to 2030, but it's presenting these solution pathways up to 2050. So without preempting any specific things, but yeah, GEO-7 is looking at how to internalize externalities to correct pricing. But when we are doing that, is how we are going to make sure that we are not imposing this increase in price in the less in the lower economic classes. How we are going to bring these economic principles for beyond GDP metrics to reduce inequalities. So that will include also enabling infrastructure for circular economy, for circular behavior. We will need to shift to sustainable and healthy diets to include and deal also with poverty and inequalities. And when we are talking also about the energy access, we also need to look at the energy poverty. So again, I'm just trying to give a little bit of the areas where GEO-7 is looking at without preempting anything, but just to really give you this kind of holistic approach to solve the global environmental crisis. And I will stop here.
Yeah, few words from my end, both on Wendy's contributions and the questions that we have online. For me, the great findings of GEO-7, it's really on this solution pathway, because it's really give us the opportunity to come with something that has been showcased in the regions, with some result, with some milestone, etc., and a solution that is clear and which we can use the toolkit or the toolbox to really address the problem. So perhaps as the system is still, the process is still on, putting a lot of emphasis on capacity building, rethinking, for example, the summary for decision makers, and could be one of the way to make a solution pathway a real vehicle of how can we use the findings of GEO-7, and how can, for example, in the countries without a superb knowledge, superb expertise, they can really integrate this in the decision-making tools, etc. And that is something that perhaps as a secretarial, we can continue to perhaps to elaborate on. And this is the second time that I'm hearing that. But the good news is that this solution also comes from experts across the world, which also use the opportunity of the GEO to really, as they build this assessment, to also exchange knowledge, to exchange trick and findings, etc. And as a secretary, I think that this is something that we have to continue to amplify. The conversation on the GDP, I would have been surprised not to hear this from my colleagues, Wendy. I would say one of the solutions where we have to continue to work and to mobilize a partnership, to mobilize collaboration, etc., is really on integrating the interconnectedness. Because when we, of course, we have to deal with energy, food, and water, and these three, this triptych, as I used to call, will always be either part of the solution or part of the problem. But I will assume that we as a UNEP, bringing in the nature-based solution, bringing in the green economy, the blue economy that the water related to. And we all know the many meetings that UNEP has been organizing on blue and green economy these years. And the fact that the Rio Convention has happened, the COP of the Rio Convention has happened in the single years, which is not something that happens often. And Wendy is very, very keen on this. It's also a key message that whether we take it through the climate change angle, the biodiversity, the desertifications, etc., we are talking about the same. And we are starting coming with a solution which also resonate and speak to the energy, speak to food, and speak to water. And of course, what Ignacio just said, it's really at the center. The choice that the decision maker will make in terms of what type of energy are we running with? What type? How are we treating our water? And how all these are interconnected? How our waste, how the pollution really affect the nature? That it's something that we have to continue to reflect on. And sometime back, I think that was UNEP 4. One of the resolution was on natural capital, and not to reveal any secret, I was having one of the conversation with Wendy, and it was telling me why we look forward to see the day member state will say, okay, guys, we are asking you as UNEP and your other partners to really sit down and go through resolutions and see how you can implement it, some of these very important ones. And this bring the nature-based solution that is very holistic because it discusses the issues of energy, the food, and water together. So I will anticipate that as we also generate it, understand more and more the interconnectedness of the climate, of natures, of the pollutions, we will also learn more so that the solutions, nature-based solution really, which is one of the end less polluted ways to go, would come back to the center of our conversations so that our member state can have a fresh thinking based on the assessment that, of course, through the GEO plus, I would say GEO plus 7 plus X plus B, etc., will really bring around the table. So this is a conversation that we can just maybe continue to elaborate, to exchange views on, but I think that it's a work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin, Ignacio, and Cyril. I think we are now coming to a close of this event. As you have heard, you can still share your expertise. The link to register for the intergovernmental and experts peer review process has been shared indeed in the chat and will be available on the webpage of this event. We have seen online with us and here in the room member states, colleagues from other UN agencies, including from global environmental agreements that are not administrated by UNEP, that are also relevant to this discussion. I've seen also the head of the Global Cities Hub and various friends from civil society organizations. So we hope to see you all involved in the review process to bring your expertise. The last message I think we can share here is also that we hope to have you all using the GEO reports in your work. You are now all the new, those who have been attending this event, but also those who will be watching the video of this event later or attending other briefings on this process. You are new ambassadors, so we count on you to share the findings of the reports and other tools that are produced by this process. And when we will be launching, we hope also to be, once the report is out, to do a presentation here targeted specifically to International Geneva and how this can be used in the multilateral processes that we have here. So we look forward to engage again with our friends and colleagues in Nairobi. So with that, we are now closing the event. And maybe thank you, of course, thank the panelists and all those who have joined us online or who will later watch the video of this event, and also those who helped preparing this session, hiding behind the scenes and the cameras. And finally, I also wanted to bring to the attention of all of you that we will be having our last event next week. We are joined by faith-based organizations, and what a better moment than the end of the year to reflect on how they are contributing in tackling the triple planetary crisis. You know that you have numerous faith-based organizations based here in Geneva, so they will be joining us. And the event will be preceded by an interactive musical moment from 1 p.m. here at the International Environment House. So we hope to see many of you in person to be able also to enjoy that moment. So I think we close here, and once more, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good night. Goodbye.